What is going on, culture changers? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Cody, and I brought my brother Dylan today. We're going to be talking about a couple things, starting with Steve Nash taking over as the Nets head coach, Jacksonville Jaguars cleaning house, ready for a rebuild, Leonard Fournette heading to Tampa Bay, our picks for NFL division winners, James Harden being a defensive player in Game 7 last night, and Giannis Antetokounmpo being rumored to the Heat or Toronto Raptors this upcoming season following this year. So we're going to go ahead and get started off with Steve Nash taking over as the Nets head coach. It was on a 4-year deal. Obviously, KD and Kyrie had to write off on this. What are your thoughts?
So I think that there's like a spectrum of where he can be. I think he can be either like a Jason Kidd, who's been like okay as a head coach so far, nothing like crazy, or like Steve Kerr, who's obviously had a lot of success.
Yeah,
I think obviously he can fall somewhere in between. I mean, he was a great player. He had a lot of high basketball IQ. He's been around some good coaches. Apparently, he was like an assistant in Golden State. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
So, I think there's the potential there. Plus, he's obviously got some great players. So, it might not be year 1 or 2 that you see his potential, but 3 or 4, you might see him become a really good head coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think he does a great job, working with players in the offseason, kind of staying current to the times. And he's been with the Warriors for the past couple years, I believe. And that's kind of where he built a relationship with Kevin Durant. So obviously that's big when you've got like your biggest player is tied to the organization and is saying yeah and agreeing to like the head coaching hire. Obviously, he was in the league not that long ago. He's a Hall of Fame basketball player. Can he take that to the next level and become a Hall of Fame basketball coach? Obviously, the East, I mean, it's an easier division or conference, but, at some point, the Nets are probably going to take over, and that might be starting next year, right?
Right.
So next up, what we're going to be discussing is the Jacksonville Jaguars cleaning house.
I'm a little bit excited for this one because let's not lie. We tried to record this a couple times before, and there was a couple interruptions that ruined the recording and whatnot. So, actually, before we recorded, there was no news that the Browns actually traded for Ronnie Harrison, and that came out after the fact. So, this adds more to the topic that we were going to talk about today.
So, obviously Ronnie Harrison, he's not like a world beater or anything like that, but he definitely fills a hole for the Browns in that safety room. Other than that, though, they have traded away Yannick Ngakoue, Calais Campbell, AJ Boye, Jalen Ramsey, and they just waived Leonard Fournette. So they're trying to get rid of everybody that they can, trying to acquire as much draft capital as they possibly can moving forward. Everyone's saying tank for Trevor or for Justin Fields. It's up to the GM to decide who's the better prospect for their organization going forward. But, I mean, clearly you can see they're trying to go in full tank mode, which it can backfire on them because, if they're not selecting the right guys, if they're not, choosing the proper culture changers, ironic enough, that franchise could kind of fall in a downward spiral and, get to like other franchises have previously in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think that like one of their issues was like there were a couple off seasons in a row where they just had a lot of salary cap space. So they brought in a lot of free agents. It wasn't guys that they drafted and it was like homegrown guys who really bought into the culture. It was just a bunch of guys from all over the place. It worked. It got them to the AFC Championship. But since then, everything's just falling apart. It doesn't seem like they have the culture that they need yet. And it seems like they're just trying to hit the reset button, finally get their own guys in there and, try to become contenders. It'll be a couple years, but they have to try to go get the quarterback first.
Right. And I mean, it wasn't even that long ago that Jacksonville was just competing in the AFC Conference Championship game against the Patriots, and they even had a lead in that game at one point, like late into the game. So it's not like they can't get back there, but it's just unfortunate that they really had such a small window and they weren't able to take advantage of it.
Right.
Mostly because of the quarterback situation, but that's how it goes. So moving forward, we have Leonard Fournette joining Tom in Tampa Bay. Obviously, he was just with the Jaguars and they waived him, a former first-round pick, drafted in the top 5. We think that he can be great in short distance, goal line situations, and potentially could take over as the workhorse back if things don't work out with Ronald Jones.
Yeah, I mean, they keep saying right now that Ronald Jones is like their lead back, but I think it's only because he's the guy that's been there the longest. Like,
Yeah.
he's nothing, like, in my opinion, I don't know him. Like, I haven't watched a lot of Tampa Bay, so I don't know. But I've never seen him be like something spectacular, you know?
Yeah.
They brought in Shady McCoy, so clearly they weren't content enough with what they had at running back. And now they're bringing in Leonard Fournette, so clearly they're still not content with what they have at running back. I think he is a guy that has some talent, but he has to show it, and maybe actually having more weapons around him, maybe he'll finally kind of live up to those expectations he was when he was drafted in the top 5.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see it. Like you said, maybe they just weren't, satisfied with what they had in their running back room, and they wanted to kind of build on that and maybe kind of make it more complete and have guys that do different things, right? Maybe, Shady's that guy that's still a little bit elusive, and then you have Leonard, who is the ground and pound guy, and then maybe Ronald's that change of pace where he kind of does a little bit of both. He fights for extra yards, but he can make people miss. But Leonard Fournette going there definitely helps improve that team and will give them, good running back in certain situations, which is something that you always want to see. The next thing that we are going to touch on is the NFL division winners. How we usually do this is we start with the AFC and then go to the NFC. We start with the East and then move to the West. So starting out with the AFC East, we have the Buffalo Bills. Now, obviously, they made the playoffs last year and they were a first-round exit, but, it's another team with most of the same guys coming back. They have some pieces that left or retired, but they did add Stephon Diggs, which should make that offense a little bit better, and the continuity and the coaching should make this team a little bit better moving forward. I think that the Dolphins can somewhat challenge them in that division, and, Dylan thinks that the Patriots can potentially challenge them in that division. I think that defense is definitely pretty good. I think it was a top 5 defense last year, and they're probably looking, to move forward and become even better. The next division that I have is the AFC North, and I can't go against my Cleveland Browns. Even though Baltimore and Pittsburgh is in that division, I just think that we have a lot of talent, and if our coaching can come together, that we could potentially win that division. I definitely think that we can make the playoffs as a wild card for sure. But, I just think that we have so much talent if we can get everything to come together. And, obviously some of the injuries that have already happened hurt us. But, bringing in a guy like Ronnie Harrison could potentially help us, come together and make some plays when it's necessary. The AFC South, I got to go with the boys, the Tennessee Titans. Shout out, no free shout out. If you know what I'm talking about, But no, Will Compton and Taylor Lewan have a podcast, Busting with the Boys. It's an awesome podcast. I highly suggest everyone to watch it. But they're an underrated team who went to the conference championship game last year. And, they were playing a great game until the Chiefs pulled away. But I definitely think that division's up for grabs. But I think that they're the favorite to land it. And then lastly, in the AFC West, you got to go with the Chiefs. I mean, they're defending Super Bowl champions. They're bringing back 20 of 22 starters. They've got to be the team to beat just in the entire league. But in that division, it's definitely a good division, but I definitely think that the Chiefs are going to take that one.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start all the way with the East as well. I thought you made some pretty good predictions. So I think I'll go with the Buffalo Bills as well. I just think that they don't have a ton of star power. Like, they have some in the right places, like Tre'Davious White and Stephon Diggs and some of these other guys, right? But they are just a good team. They're a really well-coached team. They don't, the only thing that I feel like does hold them back at times is just Josh Allen. Like, he kind of wants to be Superman and make all the plays, where they're a team that doesn't necessarily need to just, have a top-tier quarterback. Like, they can rely on the run game or his ability to scramble. And like Cody said earlier, I think the Patriots, we are talking about culture, right? And they have some of the best culture in the NFL. So
they do.
I think that they still have a chance to compete for that division. The next is the AFC North, and I'm just going to go with the Baltimore Ravens. I do believe in my Browns. I think that they can have a good year. But, I've been there. I've done that. Once I see it and I believe it, fine. Then I'll be happy. But I'm just going to go with the Ravens. They have the continuity. They've been doing this for several years now. The next team I'm going to go with is also the Tennessee Titans. I just think that they can really control a game. I think it's a perfect fit for Ryan Tannehill, and their defense is pretty good. They lack like that top end like edge rusher, but they still do a lot of creative things on defense to really confuse opponents.
Plus they are one of the favorites to end up landing Jadeveon, so they could get it. Although he hasn't had great sack numbers, he's still a threat.
Yeah. And then lastly, I'm going to go with the Chiefs as well. They're the reigning Super Bowl champions. They have the best player in the league. Andy Reid's one of the best coaches in the league. Like, I don't know how you don't choose
So
them.
we do have the same picks, well, no, you picked the Ravens, I picked the Browns. But other than that, everybody else is the same.
Yep.
All right, so now I'll move to the NFC East, and honestly, the Cowboys are just so loaded. They are making a coaching change. I think that they've got to be the team to beat. Philadelphia is dealing with a lot of injuries right now. They're kind of dealing with roster turnover. And some of their key guys are, getting up there in age, right? Like Jason Peters is having to replace Brandon Brooks as a guard. So now they're having Andre Dillard play tackle, and he's been hurt and in and out of camp. And Wentz is always hurt. So I just think that Dallas, it's their division to win, right? They stack the defensive line. They've got weapons everywhere. The secondary is kind of turned over, but I think they're hoping that those young guys can make plays for them. I don't think really anything else is left to be said for that division. I think, the Eagles are going to challenge them, but that's really about it. Moving to the NFC North, this one's pretty tough, but I think it's going to have to be the Packers again. As much as I think that the Vikings can win, I think that the Packers, they're building off of last year where they went 13-3. And, I think a lot of people didn't think that they were necessarily a 13-3 team, and they really didn't get too much better, if really at all. But, once you got that boy Aaron Rodgers on your side, man, and that defense was really good at getting after the quarterback, you just definitely have opportunity to go ahead and, win your division and beat the teams in your division and then take care of some of the other teams that you should take care of throughout the year. The NFC South, I don't think you can go against the Bucs, man. They're just so stacked this year. They're going to probably be an even more improved defense because they're not going to have to be on the field as much since, Jameis isn't there throwing picks. It's going to be Tom throwing touchdowns. And the offense is just stacked. They've got Godwin, Gronk, Evans, O.J. Howard, all the running backs we talked about earlier. The offensive line solid. They shored that up with Tristan Wirfs in the draft. And then they've got Tom. They've got a good coaching staff and a good defense behind that. I think that they're going to be, the NFC South winners, and it's probably going to start with a week 1 win over the Saints. And then finally, the NFC West, I think you just got to kind of go back to the 49ers. However, I think this is going to be the most competitive division, just thinking about it. The Seahawks are so good. I think the Cardinals are going to take the next step because they added like a guy like Isaiah Simmons and DeAndre Hopkins. So how can you go against that? The Rams, I think they're looking to bounce back and have a good year. But the 49ers, they just have so much. They've got a great coaching staff. They've got a great scheme in place, and they've got great players, great personalities all over the place. I think that it's just they are going to wrap it up and take care of the division again.
Okay, so I guess we'll only agree on one of these divisions. I think I have 3 completely different answers.
Okay.
So, and the first one is going to be the Dallas Cowboys. I just think for all the reasons that you said, they're a stacked team. Prescott's a really good quarterback. They have all the weapons you need on offense. Their defense is really good. So, and I think they're actually going to have really good coaching with Mike McCarthy.
Okay.
The next team I'm going to go with in the South is the New Orleans Saints. I mean, they've been the big dog on the block for a long time in that division. The Saints still have plenty of weapons on offense. They have plenty on defense. I'm just, and they've been doing it together for a while now. Mm-hmm. The Buccaneers, it's going to take them some time to figure it out. I still think the Saints are going to win this division.
Okay.
No matter what. The next division is the NFC
South.
Oh, no, that was the South. So the
NFC
West.
North. Did you do the North?
Oh, North.
Okay.
I'm going with Minnesota, right? They had a lot of roster turnover. They lost Everson Griffin. They lost Diggs. But they brought in a young Justin Jefferson. They brought in Yannick Ngakoue, who I think is better than Everson Griffin. Apparently, Cam Dantzler's been doing pretty good in training camp so far. I think that they're pissed off that they lost to the 49ers, and they're going to want to come back stronger than ever.
Yeah.
I think they cut out a little bit of that. Some of the guys that might have had more of an ego, and they brought in some guys who are, trying to prove themselves and prove their worth. Mm-hmm. So I think Mike Zimmer's going to have those boys ready to go.
Okay.
And then lastly, in the NFC West, this might be a hot take, but I think I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals.
Whoa.
I just think that they're going to be so hard to stop, and I think they're going to do a lot of creative things on defense. They have a lot of creative guys. They have Chandler Jones. They have Pat Pete. a lot of people
Buda
hate
Baker,
on,
Isaiah Simmons.
and another guy that I think can do some things now that he's kind of like getting into the right position is Hassan Reddick. I think they're going to put him into a better position to actually succeed rather than where he's been the first couple of years of his career in the league. And then, Kyler just being a dual threat quarterback, that's going to be so hard to stop with the weapons that they have on offense. I think that every year another team emerges out of the NFC West, and I think this year it's the Cardinals' turn.
Wow, that's crazy. All right, so that's our division winners. Let us know down below who you guys think is going to win the division. Tell us if we're right, if we're wrong. Tell us who's more right or who's more wrong. But moving on, we've got James Harden, man, down the stretch, 1-point game. The Houston Rockets were up in Game 7 against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Pass comes across the court. James Harden collapses and gets a game-winning block. The ball is gathered, and they try to throw it right at Harden. He jumps, and the ball goes out of bounds. Houston takes the ball with 1 second left to win the game and move on to the Lakers. It's just amazing because he had a terrible offensive game. I think he was, I don't know, his shooting percentage was very poor for a guy that we're used to putting up 30, 40, 50 points on a nightly basis. Yeah. And, that's the biggest thing against him is that he doesn't play defense, and he ends up winning the game because of that, And I think that the team is very, very, determined to go and play the Lakers and potentially try and upset them and make it to the finals.
Yeah, I think that James Harden he's one of the best players in the league, but it's just like he
always gets like taken for granted because he does it on a nightly basis.
Yeah, and so like it's difficult, because like until you show us that like you can get over the hump of some of these other players or some of these other teams. I know some of the odds have been kind of stacked against him, but I mean, like, dude, you're like one of the best scorers in the league, if not like the best, right? Like he can do it from all over the floor. I feel like he has gotten better defensively, and a lot of people really just don't. They, again, they take that for granted. So, it's just. I mean, show us. Like LeBron and AD are going to be hard to take down, but if you're trying to show your greatness, show it to us.
Right.
That's all I got to say about it.
Hey, I mean, that's all you got to say, for real. And then the last, thing that we kind of want to talk to you guys about today is Giannis and the Bucks. They fall down 2-0 to the Heat and Jimmy Butler. Jimmy obviously had 40 points in the first game. And then in the second game, I believe they had 6 or 7 guys in double-digit figures. Miami did. And they pretty much just took the Bucks down to the wire and won the game. I think that the Heat are one of the most underrated teams. I think Spoelstra could have been a candidate for Coach of the Year. And I think that they're going to be a challenge moving forward because they've got so many guys that can touch and move the ball and score the ball and just do everything on the floor. I don't know who's going to really be able to challenge the Heat like that, especially if they keep playing to this level, because the Bucks are supposed to be the best team in the East, right? Giannis is supposed to be the best player in the East, and that's just not the case. So I guess we'll see what happens moving forward. And then there has been rumors, floating around in the bubble down in Orlando that Giannis is either going to look to team up with the Heat or the Raptors following this season. I saw that even there's a potential that 4 superstars could join the Heat as soon as a year or 2 from now. So it'll be crazy to see what goes on right there, moving forward. The NBA is just a parity league. Things are always changing. Things are always moving. Superstars are going coast to coast, changing teams, teaming up. I mean.
Yeah, and so, I just want to kind of give my 2 cents about Giannis. So I think, and Jimmy Butler. So here, I think Giannis is the better overall player, but I think Jimmy Butler has the killer instinct. I think Giannis just lacks it. I feel like he's almost too nice of a guy or something. I don't know, too unselfish, right? He just doesn't have that I don't give a damn, I'm going to take over this game, right? He doesn't have that. Jimmy Butler has all the confidence in the world.
But Jimmy's but necessarily it's not even scoring the ball. It's getting his teammates involved. It's locking someone down on the defensive end.
Yeah.
It's saying something to, get the team riled up.
Yeah. Giannis, I don't know. Maybe it's because he's Greek and maybe, I don't know. But
that's just not in his philosophy.
I don't know. I'm not going to use that as an excuse. It's just Jimmy Butler, it's just he has that extra bit to him, that extra factor, that extra chip on his shoulder that he wants to prove to everybody, you know what, I belong in this league, I belong on the biggest stages. And Giannis, time and time again, he just keeps getting bounced in the playoffs. It's like, dude, like you have the skill set to be one of the best players of all time. Like, do it. You know, same with James Harden. Like, do it. Show us. You know, and until he does it, players like Jimmy Butler are going to be able to, you know, just beat him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think James Harden really has had the issue where he hasn't shown us. I think he's just ran into buzzsaws in the Warriors and stuff like that. But, you know, we appreciate you guys for tuning in, watching this podcast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Ding that notification bell so you know whenever we upload and you guys can watch it and, you know, tell us what you think about it. You're listening to the Culture Changers podcast. We'll see you guys in the next one.